message here is clear this evening to this group. Turn this enthusiasm that is inside this gym into votes. Not only early voting between now and noon on Monday, but also on Election Day. And there's that phrase that the Vice President will talk about bringing your friends. The question is, the enthusiasm and the momentum for President Trump, who won this state by 20 points in 2016, does that equate to Mike Braun? And can that turnout replicate what the president saw? The White House is sure banking on that. That's why the president is here today. He is also going to be here on Monday night to help shore up those votes. In between those visits, of course, former President Obama.
It's a simple question. Why did you say you were going to self-fund? You weren't going to self-fund in the general.
The camera was rolling when Mike Braun arrived at a campaign event this summer.
Yeah, I'll go call the police.
Why?
There to capture the moment, a campaign tracker for the Indiana Democratic Party.
Would you mind leaving?
Yep.
Back up to see the encounter started like this.
Hey, Mike, got a question for you.
Get out.
Sir?
Get out.
Got
Get
a
out.
question for you. Why did
Get
you
out.
lie
Get
about
out.
self-funding? Why
Get
did you
out.
lie about self-funding? Sir, why did you lie about self-funding? Why did you give yourself $1 million?
No matter your interpretation of what you just saw, this confrontation shows the high stakes and oftentimes unseen world of political tracking. Political paparazzi. And the stakes couldn't be higher to capture that moment in Indiana's race for U.S. Senate.
All right, so what's the typical profile of a tracker? Who wants to do something like this?
So a tracker is usually someone just starting out in politics.
Alexandra Smith is executive director of America Rising, a super PAC based out of Washington, the premier opposition research firm for the Republican Party. America Rising's tracker was there when Senator Donnelly launched his re-election and has followed him to public places ever since. By their own account, traveling thousands of miles and showing up at more than 200 events in Indiana alone.
Someone who's looking to really kind of cut their teeth on the campaign trail and to catch Democrats in these exciting moments where they could be used in a campaign ad or they could be used on the news.
The candidates oftentimes ignore and try to avoid. The trackers do whatever it takes to catch up, capturing hours of oftentimes mundane encounters that are sent to and stored in Washington.
Thank you all for being here today.
Their presence is no hidden secret. Behind this press conference at the Indianapolis Public Library, Donnelly's tracker. They all oftentimes engage in a behind-the-scenes back and forth with campaign staff rarely seen by voters. Staffers for any campaign will work to protect their candidate from the glare.
4 kids, 2 sons, 2 daughters.
Mike Braun entered this Indianapolis event with supporters from a back entrance. Out front, not only a few protesters, but one of his trackers, waiting to hopefully capture the candidate arriving. American Bridge is compiling hours of video too. The Washington-based Democratic super PAC is following the Republican candidate everywhere from fish fries in Warsaw to private fundraisers in D.C. And sometimes the mere video is enough.
Now the Republican Senate nominee is going directly to the swamp.
To help, communication and research teams have been assembled on both sides to assist trackers on the ground.
Candidates understand that, this is the 21st century, it's 2018, this is part of what politics is now.
But in Indiana, tracking has also gone terribly wrong. Like in 2012, when Marion Superior Court Judge Jose Salinas was leaving a state Democratic gathering in Indianapolis, a guy started following him, eventually weaving in and out of traffic along the interstate for 16 miles.
So at this point, Judge Salinas says he was pretty nervous. So he got off the interstate, pulled into this parking lot off of I-65 just to see what the guy would do. The judge says he followed him, actually stopped on this side street, so he was able to get his license.
Police determined the guy was a tracker for the state Republican Party, who thought Judge Salinas was actually Joe Donnelly. This cycle, Indiana Republicans don't have a hired tracker.
Were they this close to you, like from what
Oh, easily this close. Easily this close. And right in my face.
Christina Hale ran for lieutenant governor in 2016 and and was followed at length by a tracker.
It's a very strange thing. I had my first tracker at a town hall meeting when I realized, you know, this guy's only taking photos of me, and there were a lot of elected officials and candidates there. And so I asked him, you know, are you a tracker? And he got very, very defensive. And yeah, he was out to get a bad picture of me, which he got.
None of the trackers working in Indiana would talk to us on camera.
Again, I'm not going to answer any questions.
Their work, though, will live on through Election Day and beyond. They also wouldn't reveal all they've captured, and perhaps a sign of suspense for a last-minute October surprise.
They are conversations we're having around the dinner table, with our friends, even with our coworkers. A year into the presidency of Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence, we wanted to hear from Indiana voters. And we found Hoosiers still divided on seemingly every topic, ranging from religion to sports, the media, immigration, and most of all, politics. But we also found agreement on at least one key point.
Sure, yes. There you go. You said she was lazy and she didn't work hard for what she had.
No, I did not. I never said that. They can roll the film.
1 year into the presidency of Donald Trump, we wanted to hear directly from Indiana voters.
Look at the way we're fighting today.
Good to meet you. Welcome. So for the past month, in 2 separate groups, we gathered 16 Hoosiers, invited them to City Market in downtown Indianapolis.
If you want to tuck some of the cord in, that'll probably help.
Mic'd them up and asked them to lay it all on the table.
I'm a brown girl from Pakistan, and I stand with President Trump.
He came down that elevator in New York saying Mexicans are rapists, they're criminals.
I want you to give me a word or phrase that describes President Trump's first year in office.
Absolutely winning.
Winning.
We're going to get so sick of winning, but we're winning. I love it.
I'm going to say chaotic.
Yeah, that's a better word.
Say what?
You took chaotic. Yeah. I think it's shameful, the rhetoric that's been coming out of his office and from his own Twitter feed.
I'd say disappointing.
I'd say brilliant.
Brilliant.
I would say too much drama.
Too much drama.
So working for the American people.
Panelists from our Sunday morning show In Focus picked the participants. 8 voted for Hillary Clinton, 8 backed Donald Trump. But as we quickly discovered a year later, it's still much more complicated than that.
Is Hillary president right now?
Thank God she's not.
Well, there you go.
In this first year, what has the president accomplished?
She's been making a list.
She's good to go. How much time you got? He's helping the Veterans Administration. He's repealing 22 regulations for every new one.
I have never seen Donald Trump do anything in his life that was not self-promoting.
I will say this. I just got my 401k statement in the mail, and my account has doubled since Donald Trump took office.
The conversations were civil, but seemingly every issue we brought up brought out the divide.
What are we teaching our kids? If I had a child and he was calling people names, he would be getting a timeout. And our president called a senator publicly that she would do anything. Now, he didn't say it.
It's a filthy mind that interprets what, you know.
Oh, my Lord.
I mean, seriously. Okay, and she was bleeding all over from wherever. I mean, it takes a dirty mind to interpret it that way. I'm sorry.
Everything's a fight. There's nothing positive about it.
Well, you know,
To underscore the divide, the conversations turned to immigration. These voters meeting just days after Colts player Edwin Jackson and Uber driver Jeffrey Monroe were killed by an accused drunk driver who was deported twice and is in the U.S. illegally. In response, President Trump tweeted, "This is just one of many such preventable tragedies. We must get the Dems to get tough on the border with illegal immigration fast."
Should what happened in Indianapolis this weekend shape the debates in Congress on immigration? Should it be part of that conversation?
I think it's very well should be, because you may say, well, it's an isolated case, but not particularly, because lately we have had an influx of MS-13 gangs that have come into our country illegally.
I don't think that this incident should dominate the conversation in Congress as an isolated incident. There are situations of illegal immigrants in California and Texas and et cetera, that takes place on a regular basis.
I think it still goes back to he's the leader of our country and his words matter and have an effect. This is a man who's advocated violence, who has said people who he has said at rallies at his campaign to rough people up who cause a ruckus. That's insinuating.
What about the people that were paid to go to Trump rallies from the Clinton administration to cause ruckus that weren't Trump supporters?
In our First Amendment, you have the right to protest, whether you're paid or
to
not.
jump on cars and set things on fire?
You have the right to protest. You have the right to take a knee.
Also still contentious, the NFL and protests this past season.
They were kneeling because of racial injustice. They were kneeling because we've got Nazis and KKK marching.
The Democrat Party is basically Marxist. That's where I'm coming from.
Big jump.
Well, if you want to call him a Nazi.
I have to go back to I didn't call Donald Trump a Nazi.
But people have.
But people have. Well, that didn't come out of my mouth here today, ma'am.
We also found the divide not just political, but personal.
When you see it with your own eyes and you see the heart that the man has, it's fake news. It's all fake news.
He still presents himself as a combative bully. I mean, he does.
He's fighting for us.
But why does he have to present himself that way?
I think it's because the media attack him all the time. People,
he's saying
the Hillary
things.
voters are so angry.
Him say things. The media
That's where the anger is coming from.
The media is not saying it. I'm listening to it. They're not telling me what to hear.
The future is what's so uncertain, and the solutions even more so.
Do conversations like this matter?
Very much so. And they need very much so.
But they don't happen enough naturally.
And that's why people don't understand each other and there's hatred.
Stephen, are conversations like this important?
Yes, I think they're important, but I think one of my biggest issues with these types of conversations is making sure that there is a level of respect.
I want to listen more because I'll have to say that, maybe I've been living in a bubble myself and hanging out with the same type of people with the same viewpoint as me.
These are key conversations that need to take place because in order for us to come back together again and be one people, one nation, then this has to happen.
So add to that, some of our voters, as you saw, with dramatically different views, some of them even stayed late after one of the tapings and grabbed a beer together. They want to continue talking in the coming weeks. You can now join the conversation right now online. Check out cbs4indy.com/Hoosiers Divided or download our app. You can learn more about the participants and watch extended videos broken down by topic.
Well, they are passionate. They are all passionate, not afraid to speak out at all.
And listen, no one's minds were changed here this evening. But I think when we got towards the end of this piece and this conversation about does this matter, there was some realization that, hey, I can sit across the table from you and I may disagree with you, but hey, I can listen, and we don't do that enough.
Kind of makes you wonder when the last time some of our elected officials got together and talked like that.
Right? Maybe we'll do that next, Bob.
We'll see.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, thank you, Matt.
The campaigns realize there are still a lot of these persuadable voters and likely some people who may change their minds in the coming days. We had our final debate here in Indiana just a couple of days ago. Whether that changed anyone's mind is still up for question. But I think there is this core chunk of supporters for either camp that could still have a little bit of wiggle room as we head into Tuesday.
I'm always so surprised, like days before an election, Matt, when you tell me that people are still undecided. I mean, like, how can you not be how can you be undecided at this point? But what do you find that these folks that can this margin of folks who can be persuaded one way or the other at this point? What do they want?
Well, listen, we're in a really red state, right? President Trump won Indiana by 20 points, nearly 20 points back in 2016. If you look at Senator Donnelly's campaign ads, besides his last one that he's airing right now, which is the come together piece, right, that we typically see at the very end, and you didn't know who Senator Donnelly was, you may think he was a Republican, the way he was talking in his final couple of ads. So you have that dynamic playing of a Democrat, a moderate Democrat, really trying to win re-election in a red state. and you have this new incomer to national statewide politics, Mike Braun, and I think that could be playing a little bit of a factor in what we're seeing, at least short term here.